What is happening, everybody? James Hancock here. I'm back to review Christy, starring the lovely Sydney Sweeney. This is a boxing drama about the career of Christy Martin, a.k.a. the coal miner's daughter, who was active from 1989 to 2012, and who now goes by her maiden name, Christine Salters. And to find out why, well, you'll have to see the movie.
First time I ever stepped in a boxing ring, all I knew was I had to beat that bitch before she had a chance to hit me.
But from the word go, I should acknowledge that I was largely unfamiliar with Christy's career, apart from a few highlight reels of her best knockouts, which I watched on YouTube earlier today, and they are well worth hunting down. She could basically, when she hit people, it was like getting hit by like a cement mixer. She had a lot of dynamite in those fists of hers. But just so you know where I'm coming from, when it comes to the sport of boxing, I would describe myself as a casual fan at best. I dip in and out of the sport periodically, a couple times a year, usually because a friend of mine who's much more into it might be watching a big event. But I'm much more interested in mixed martial arts. However, through the show Morning Combat, hosted by Luke Thomas and Brian Campbell, I do get a lot of boxing news because in their show, they cover mixed martial arts as well as boxing. So inevitably, through osmosis, I hear about some stuff going on in the world of boxing. But when it comes to boxing movies, I think I've seen just about all of them. I mean, I'm a sucker for any movie going back to, Charlie Chaplin and City Lights hiding behind the referee. Or movies like The Setup in the late 40s, like, fucking awesome. Or Fat City, directed by John Huston. Or obviously, like anything from the Rocky franchise. But I love movies about boxing. But here's the official description of the movie from Wikipedia. Christy is a 2025 American biographical sports drama film about the former professional boxer Christy Martin, played by Sydney Sweeney. The film, directed by David Michôd, I'm not quite sure how he pronounces his name, and written by Michôd and Mira Folks, chronicles Martin's rise to becoming America's most well-known female boxer in the 1990s, and later, her husband's attempt to murder her in 2010. The film had its world premiere at the 2025 Toronto International Film Festival on September 5th, 2025, in the special presentations section. And as far as the director, David, I'm going to say because I don't know how to say his last name, but the only other movie by him that I've seen was The King, starring Timothée Chalamet back in 2019. So anytime a movie comes along featuring the sweet science front and center as the feature attraction, I immediately sit up and take notice, especially if it's starring Sydney Sweeney. And this is a bit of a departure from some of her earlier work. I mean, if you know her from Euphoria and The White Lotus, or what was that movie she did with Glenn Powell? That was such a big hit. I didn't see it, but Anyone But You, which was a big breakout movie, proving that she could potentially be a box office star if you put her in the right role. But I usually associated her with kind of hard-hitting, edgy dramas with a lot of, wonderful depictions of the nude female forms. Let's just get it out of the way. Obviously, Sydney Sweeney is very attractive, and periodically she'll make the entire internet just go into a complete conniption fit over her red carpet appearances or blue jeans commercials or Saturday Night Live appearances. She is definitely a massive celebrity. The question is she a movie star? I do think she has some chops.
Coal miner's daughter who fights in pink trunks and sleeps with a corner man. I love it. Sign up.
And even if she occasionally takes a misstep with a movie like Madam Web, she'll bounce back with a movie like Immaculate, which was not a perfect horror movie, but it was at least a pretty gruesome horror movie. I've got, I would say, fond memories of Immaculate without feeling compelled to go back and rewatch it over and over and over again. And one of the first things people will notice with Christy is that obviously Sydney Sweeney's trying to go in a different direction with her look for this movie. She has a hairstyle early on, which I'm going to borrow a line from Luke Thomas, the host of this show, where sometimes he'll describe fighters saying it looks like they're trying to have 4 separate haircuts at the exact same time. The way Sydney Sweeney looks when we initially discover her in West Virginia when she's winning this tough woman contest. She's a basketball player, not a boxer, but she just shows up and gets a paycheck to beat the crap out of some girl. Her haircut, let's just say, is unbecoming. And then as she becomes more successful and then her career as a boxer starts taking off, then she just goes for like full-blown, like it's like a jerry curl, the kind of jerry curl that a man would wear like in the late 70s and early 80s with like, a big giant mustache. But yeah, I don't know which haircut is worse. But over the course of the movie, slowly but surely, she starts to look more like the Sydney Sweeney that we all know and love. But having now seen her in a variety of stage boxing matches with a lot of elaborate choreography, she clearly put in the hours. She put in some work to get prepared for this movie. I'm not going to say that she should become an amateur boxer or go pro. I mean, a lot of her punches look like they would not land with that much impact, at least in comparison to the real deal Christy Martin, who once again, like I said, she hits like a goddamn cement truck. But at least Sydney Sweeney, you could tell she wasn't trying to maintain that beautiful hourglass form. She bulked up. She got a little more butch looking for this movie, which is perfectly fitting given the role that she is playing. But once you get over the initial discussion of how Sydney Sweeney transformed her body for this movie and all the training that she went through, you're left with the question, is it a good movie? And I would say it's pretty good. It's a pretty good movie with a lot of really good performances, as opposed to a really good movie with perhaps some people who are good at boxing but can't necessarily act. I think the movie gets better as it goes because it transforms from your typical rags to riches story of somebody who's poor, who achieves media superstardom. But when it gets into the darker chapters later on, it's pretty ruthless and pretty grim, thanks to the portrayal of Jim Martin by Ben Foster, where Ben Foster just leans into the most nightmarish portrayal of this character that you can possibly imagine, from his possessiveness and his physical abuse of Christy, and all the weird kind of side hustles that he forces her to go into of a more sexual nature in order to make money on the side, and all the drugs he's trying to push on her. I mean, he's a really dark, savage individual. And as you heard earlier in the description from Wikipedia, he eventually did try to kill her in 2010 when she threatened to take her business elsewhere, find a new trainer. And I should specify that he is her trainer, her manager, and her husband, which gives him way too much control over her life, especially when she decides, you know what, maybe I need to start building a new life for myself away from this guy. But my biggest criticism of the movie is that it's way too goddamn long, or at least feels way too goddamn long. It's 2 hours and 15 minutes, and I felt like the movie kind of ran out of gas around the hour 45-minute mark. Right as I was getting into some of the most interesting stuff, it's almost like you expend all your energy and your patience on the fun stuff, but by the time it gets to the really, meaty, nasty, adversarial, violent drama, you're already kind of spent by that point. And I feel like they could have tightened it up just a little bit, made it a little bit more effective, because I think people will love Sydney Sweeney's performance. They will love Ben Foster's performance, and they'll love a lot of the other performances in here by actors like Katie O'Brien, who's absolutely phenomenal in this movie because A, she's a good actress, but B, she's already done all the hard work to look completely, totally jacked and shredded. She's a martial artist. She's a bodybuilder. I mean, in Love Lies Bleeding, I mean, she's competing in a lot of bodybuilding tournaments in that movie, and yeah, she is fucking diesel. But she does a great job as Lisa Holwine, if I'm saying her name correctly, who is Christy's biggest boxing adversary, and later her lover, Scandalous. And I should also add that Chad L. Coleman is pretty goddamn good as Don King. And obviously, if you follow boxing at all, even casually, you'll know about Don King, because while he was a huge boxing promoter for many, many decades, he was also a teeny bit corrupt and was known to be pretty ruthless in his business tactics and ruined many careers. For every career where he helped people kind of reach the stratosphere, there were plenty of other boxers where their careers were left in tatters. And this movie never shies away from any of that. I like the fact that this movie wasn't trying to be like the happy, wholesome, family-friendly version of the Christy Martin story. It's got some ruthless darkness at its core. And maybe if I wasn't so ignorant about the sport of boxing, I would have known in advance, I would have had a better idea of what kind of movie I was getting into, but or maybe I should have just paid a little closer attention to the trailer. I made the mistaken assumption in advance that Christy was going to be your typical kind of assembly line, cookie cutter, rags to riches sports drama about somebody who's basically from bumfuck West Virginia who achieves fame and fortune in the world of boxing. So I think a lot of people might overlook just how many interesting qualities that this movie has to offer. However, it's not a home run. It's not a total slam dunk, like I mentioned before. It's long and slow and emotionally and physically taxing. Like when the movie ended, I didn't think to myself, wow, I'm going to go for a run and do some push-ups and get fired up and start training and getting in shape. I was like, I gotta write down some notes and think about what I want to say for my review. So it is a bit of an exhausting movie, but I do think it'll be an interesting feather in the cap of the career of Sydney Sweeney, because obviously movie stars are not built overnight with a single movie. I mean, sometimes that can happen, but those careers are built brick by brick over many, many years, where you have to put together an incredible foundation. And once you have 5, 6, 7 great movies to your name, or 5, 6, 7 great shows to your name, well, then you can start building toward your true goals, whatever those goals might be. And I like the fact that Sydney Sweeney just wants to be more than just the most sizzling piece of ass that Hollywood has to offer. And admittedly, when it comes to physical beauty, she's doing just fine in that department. I mean, some of those pictures that went online recently, I mean, everybody was just drooling and salivating over those pictures and video clips 4 days. They just wouldn't go away. But I think Sydney Sweeney has more to offer than just being a pretty face. However, if she were to take requests, if I were her agent or manager and I was trying to help her build a more interesting career for my particular tastes, I would encourage her to take a look at some genres that have been neglected as of late. In particular, erotic thrillers or psychological thrillers, because in the 1990s we had a ton of them. But while I was watching it, I kept thinking, what if she were in a movie like Bound, starring Jennifer Tilly and Gina Gershon? And the reason I was thinking of that is because Sydney Sweeney's character in this movie, while she's married for many, many years to her trainer, she also has several girlfriends and ultimately ends up settling down with a woman later on in life. And I was thinking, God damn, like Sydney Sweeney, I don't know who would be her perfect co-star. Probably an actress like Margaret Qualley or Mia Goth, but basically another actress who is open to really kind of wild, outrageous material. And I'm not recommending or suggesting that anybody should remake Bound. I'm just talking about movies like Bound, where you basically have a really cool, edgy, stylish, erotic thriller that just happens to star two beautiful girls as opposed to your typical kind of private detective like Sam Spade or Philip Marlowe or Mike Hammer, any of those other characters that we know from like the 1940s or the 1950s. In any case, I'm not quite sure what else there is to discuss about Christy, apart from just repeating what I already said. It's a little too long. The fight scenes are serviceable, but not remarkable. I mean, no one's going to come away from this movie thinking that they've seen some of the best action choreography in recent years. Maybe they were trying to be a little too realistic, or maybe just the actresses didn't have enough time to prepare really kind of hard-hitting combat scenes. But the combat scenes or the action scenes they're just fine. But this movie is just much more concerned with the personal story of Christy Martin, especially coming from an environment where her parents are very hostile about her sexual preferences and her personal life. And so she's having to overcome some resistance within her own family, many of whom, like Joyce Salters, played by Merritt Weaver, are just absolute scum of the earth. But if you're a fan of Sydney Sweeney and you want to support her in her endeavors as she tries to take on more kind of character-driven roles as opposed to beauty-driven roles, by all means, take Christy for a spin. I think you will enjoy it. I just don't know how many people are going to absolutely love it, but that remains to be seen. I look forward to hearing what reactions people have to offer down in the comments below. But I think that's about all I have to say. So if you enjoyed this video, please consider liking, subscribing, hitting that notification bell. Hope everybody has an amazing weekend at the movies, and more importantly, as always, onwards and upwards.